Kundalini after your awakening, or did it lead to it? Because some people, did you have that? Well, when you talked about the bookshop and all that, that seemed to come out of nowhere, right? But or was the stuff happening before?
There was stuff happening. There were 2 Kundalini awakening. One was prior to awakening, which was about 6 months before. We started with Kriyas. Nothing as dramatic as yours, but like more just like the just hand movements. And you know, when I relaxed in bed, there'd be a lot of hand movements and leg movements and all that kind of stuff. Which I went to the doctor about because I thought, you know, I was developing something really bad. And and then around awakening, there was a lot of kind of experiences around that, were kind of like downloads, illuminations, I think the technical term for seeing and knowing around that. And then that calmed down pretty quick. And then the second was rather than energetic process, was a light Kundalini process, which began with a vision, which I talked about, being in hell and heaven, and then to other vision. Well, not a vision, because I was in hell. That was my experience, was being in hell and being in heaven and being in these other realities. So that started, and it hasn't stopped. But that brought an end to a lot of the repression. I'm sure there's loads of repression left, but like it cleared up a lot of that. So I found it interesting because Bonnie Greenwell was the first one I'd heard say that this can happen after awakening. So I was like, you know, it's happening after, you know, so it's...
One thing I'm concerned about, particularly at the moment, is just perception of others, because I've started a YouTube channel called Kundalini and Non-Duality, but I might cut the non-duality bit off and just talk about Kundalini, because there's still stuff that I don't fully understand, the everything, nothing, and like I don't feel confident enough to really, like, I start talking about it because I feel like this loss of sense of self, but I can't quantify it, I can't be sure of it, like, but there's no, like, it doesn't matter, I'm not bothered about it, I stopped sort of ruminating about it now, and I'm just sort of concentrating on Kundalini, because I can talk about it, because it's I can just relate my experience rather than try and talk to someone about something I don't really know. It's much easier just to describe bodily sensations and things that happen, so it's turning into that kind of channel, and it's fun, it's been really fun to do, and I've got some cool footage of me doing like mad head soaring and pretty dramatic stuff, so I think it would be interesting for people to watch, and it's, you know, I'm a performer, so I try to make it quite funny as well and not take it too seriously, right. You know. So it's quite cool, it's a nice little project, but I'm sort of at the point, like, I'm toying with the idea of just posting it and just showing it to all the people I know, you know, on social media or whatever like that. But I just don't know if I can deal with the backlash of people, you know, the worried looks and the sort of people calling me up and being like, "You okay?" You know, because I spoke to one, when I left my job, I was working at the nursery, and I spoke to my boss. She was kind of, I thought that she might understand, because she was kind of smoked a lot of DMT and she was aware of alternate reality. So I thought, I've got to give her a reason why I'm leaving. It's someone I know really well. I mean, she's my boss, but she was my boss, but she was a friend for a long time. So
right.
I told her what had gone on, and I left her a message talking about my chakras being open. One morning I said, I can't come into work because my chakras are open. She was like, okay. I think she thought I'd be doing tons of acid or something. And then we met in a bar, and I had this mad mark on my forehead, which is, it comes and goes depending on how often I do that, but at the time it was really pronounced and scabby, and I took my hat off and I was like, the reincarnation of some Egyptian bloke. Understandably, she now thinks I'm crazy. At the beginning of the Kundalini, it was so overwhelming that I had all these sort of, I don't know, just like, I genuinely thought some spirit had entered my body. I don't know if it had or not, but that kind of magic aspect and intensity has calmed down, and it's more like Macri and stuff like that. But anyway, so I told her, and I think she still thinks I've only told her recently that it was a Kundalini. I just said I had a kind of awakening that was really bizarre. So I don't know how much she thinks I'm crazy or how much she thinks I'm actually going through something. But the few people that I've told about it, I don't know, is more concerned about me than like, oh wow, how interesting, who knew, you know, that's the reaction I'm hoping for. People go, wow, that's a real thing, because that's you know, how I felt, how I feel that this is happening, you know, but I don't know if I can deal with the sort of concerned looks and all that.
I wonder if you just do more. I mean, it seems a shame to me that you're not doing the non-dual as well and sought it, like, because it seems to me pretty clear that maybe you haven't talked it through enough, or like
Maybe.
kind of, I don't know, whatever it is. I bet it will come. It'll come where you just.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to kind of really just not give a flying fuck about anything, you know. But your Kundalini stuff is so unique and out there. Like it's.
Well, that's what I'm quite passionate about. I kind of want people to see this. So
Yeah.
at the moment, it's really like underground. You know, I've shared it with Rakesh and people, and you're welcome to check it out.
Oh yeah, I'll have to do so.
But I'm just tempted. I just want to push the button and go. Oh, I just want to see what happens. Because it's gonna be so crazy, you know. Because people are just. I mean, I'm fat. I don't know. People think I'm weird anyway. I mean, some people might not be too surprised, but I've always been seen as a crazy character. But I don't know what.
I wonder who the people you're around, because you come across to me as pretty grounded. So I mean.
I'm grounded. I'm just eccentric. I've taken a lot of drugs and I have crazy stories, and so people see me as a kind of eccentric psychedelic guy, you know. So maybe that some people wouldn't be too surprised,
But if you're having that mirrored back, those concerned looks, I mean, I can imagine if I had been getting that would have really shut me down. So it's like even if you do get out there and maybe do a talk or something, and you're getting people who are coming along to see you, and they're not going to have that, you know, it might build up your resilience, because there'll come a point where you really won't give a toss whether if they've got those, and they'll probably drop away, because it's just it's harder for you because it's more extreme, I think, and which is your gift, isn't it? Because it's really interesting.
Well, that's what's exciting about it, and that's why I want to post it, because I have looked online, and there are images of people having Kriya, but my stuff is mad. It's really mad.
Oh, it's a real deal, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's just
crazy. I'm like, it's just bonkers. I mean, like I said at the beginning, there was just so much. Everything was just, the world was just a magical place all of a sudden, and just in the synchronicities, and it was just like, oh, magic is a thing. Well, that's really real, and that was a revelation. But now it's just bodily. It's just the body and the sort of, you know, going through soaring and random. Oh, I had this thing. It's just been, and the healing. It's just been fixing. Like, I can't believe it. Like it's just like I had this really bad acid reflux and I couldn't sleep for ages, and now I sleep like a baby, because it just like one night, it was over Christmas, you know, you just eat tons of crap, and I went to bed one night and I was like, it really burns, and then I think one hand just went up to my my forehead, and the other one, no, that was something else, that was for this hand went like for my stomach, and that one went there, and it just sort of found where the pain was, like. And then it felt like whatever was in my body came up to meet my fingertips, and it was just like, I could just feel energy or something, and it was like it was coating it inside in some sort of protective thing, and then when it finished, all the pain, I could feel the acid coming up, but it just wasn't painful anymore. Like that night, it just sorted it. It's just sorting stuff out. I'm just so blown away by it.
Whoa.
And then the other thing, there was one night, and this is the first time I got really scared. I got genuinely scared, because I'd always seen, I mean, talk about Kundalini as like a female energy, you know, and
Shakti.
Shakti, and it does do these beautiful things, like when you go through a sort of session, it will kind of go like, I got footage of this as well, kind of like, you know, this sort of loving, self-loving sort of weird energy. I forgot what my point was. And so there was this one night where, and I was quite high, I'd taken a couple of pretty strong gummy bears, and then so my body relaxes more, and then stuff gets a bit crazy, and it started to like rough me up, and suddenly it was like mum was home before, and like now dad's at home, and it was this kind of doing this kind of, and that I really got quite frightened, and at one point it grabbed my throat like that, and it tightened a little bit more, and I was like, I don't know where this is going, and it tightened a little bit more, and I felt like it was going like, do you trust me that I'm not gonna kill you? I was like, how far do you trust me? It's like, okay, I'm still okay, I'm not, because I can stop at any time, I can just move my hand, I feel like I have that.
I get that.
Maybe one day I won't, maybe this thing will take over me, and it didn't do anything, it's never hurt me, but it was the closest it got to, like, it felt really threatening, and I was like, and it's never done it since. But it has got rougher since. Like the one time I was just doing like that for just ages, and then I was like, well, surely I don't need my hands. And he's like, no, your hands don't need to be there. So and stuff like that. But yeah, that day I was really, really freaked out. And then I think it was just that. I think it was just sort of testing me in a way. And since then, that has been like a rougher aspect to it. But it's never hurt me. And now I know, I do trust it basically. So.
Well, the fear of insanity is big in the literature, isn't it? And
yeah.
Go be Krishna, and you can see how it can combine with insanity. And if you're out there and nobody's experiencing what you've experienced, I mean, my God, you're so but it sounds like but if you're having concerned looks and you're out there on your own, I mean,
well, I mean, look at what happened to Jesus.
What happened to Jesus? Like,
he got crucified.
But that was more.
Yeah, but the thing is, it is online. It is about, like, you can Google Kundalini and it will come up with, like, it is a thing. Now.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
There are people talking about it. It wouldn't be like I was the only guy. I can point to other people like, no, look, this is a thing. Look, there's books. It's not like, so it wouldn't be like I'm completely on my own. If that makes sense. Yeah,
true, but what did you mean, Jesus, by the way? Like, because he didn't have Kundalini experiences as far as I know.
He might have done,
Oh, he got crucified with, like, the scapegoating thing? Like,
he didn't have a Kundalini experience, but, you have to, if you know the whole sort of gamut of reality and sort of consciousness and non-duality, then it's easy to well, it's not easy, but you can surmise that Jesus had an awakening of his own. 2,000 years ago, people were caught up in cycles of fear, desire, and to have some kind of clarity of that he wasn't this limited little person. He made the mistake of telling everyone about it. Well, it was a mistake. It was and it wasn't. Back then, you start saying, you don't need to fight with each other. You don't need to act this way. There is another, not reality. There is, and he felt a oneness with himself and everybody else. And unfortunately, at that time, you start saying that you feel at one with God. You get put on the cross because you're taught. You're considered to be a heretic, and I think for Jesus, he knew and he felt the oneness of life, and maybe
he threatened something. I was actually interested.
He threatened the traditional ideals at the time, that God was something other than us, that God, that we are, that God is out there, but he felt the presence of God within, and to have a revelation like that at a time like that, burning witches and even later than that, but anybody who spoke in such a way, people were crucified.
I think there's also something else going on there, maybe Kundalini, because I was thinking of your anger experience when Jesus, whether it's a real story or myth or whatever.
I wasn't relating that. Sorry, I wasn't relating that specifically to Kundalini.
I just right now, but you know, like in the temple where he was angry, you know.
I don't know that.
All right. Well, he, you know, when the money changers in the temple, he gets really angry,
Right.
does a hissy fit. But I was thinking of the spontaneous anger that you had in your job, and it did not affect the children,
No,
and
that was so
things
weird.
were done.
Yeah.
And there's something about the power in that. That's why I was thinking in the Jesus story, if it was a real, you know, really happened, there, like that spontaneity, there's a power in that that's beyond. I mean, I don't know. It's almost like I've never met someone whom it's complete. You know, like obviously we get bits of this, and you get quite a lot of this, but that anger that didn't touch the children.
Yeah,
I find that fascinating.
Passion. It wasn't anger. That was the thing. I mean, it was anger, but it was. And that's the thing with Kundalini as well. I once described it as just passion coming through my body. That specifically when it first started, it just felt like I wanted to express, you know. And maybe that's because I'm a performer anyway. But like I'd walk to work with my headphones on, and just listen to whatever like Ace, and just feel just like Pink Floyd guitar just taking me into like ecstatic sort of like just walking to work like yeah man. So I mean that's what it felt like for a long time. And when I listen to the music now, sometimes it's just the energy it excites it, you know, somehow. But my channel, you know, I don't talk about God or anything like that. It's more just like, hey guys, look what's happening to my body. How mad is this? It's just that really. It's just like, look, I'm not doing anything, and my body starts doing that. Isn't that weird? You know, it's more sort of like, let's discuss what's going on here. I spoke to this guy called Wojtek. He's talks about non-duality. He's on YouTube. I think Richard talked to him about giving him some advice. A very cool guy, and because this is at the phase when I was still thinking, I thought there was this kind of, I thought that there was like some sort of angel that was directing me, or that had taken my body, or some spirit guide, and he was just saying, no, I think it's just the body reclaiming its authenticity from the false self. That's how he described it. It's just the biology of the body, because like I'm not responsible for beating my heart or for doing anything in my life. I'm not doing anything. That's a happening, and so this is also a happening. So when something gets out of the way, here's a happening that is manifested that probably wanted to happen, but I was so tense and with the seeking that it was stunted this freedom.
Yeah, but it's interesting because say, you know, like a non-dual, like saying there's no one there, and you know no one's doing anything, and there is a conscious control, you know, of like, you know, I want this to happen.
Yes,
don't
right.
ask me how.
Yes, no, it's very different.
It's not a mind thing, is it?
Yes,
but yeah, it's being moved.
Very much so.
You know, it's very hard to get your
very hard. I can't
head
get
around
around it at all. Yeah.
no, and what is that? I mean, what the hell is that? Because it's yeah, and it seems kind of incomplete in a sense that like it doesn't continue like that. Like, you know, otherwise, can you imagine the power? You would be like a superhero.
Yeah.
It would be bizarre. Like
it's already died down for me. There was a time where the intensity was just, I would be going into a bookshop and it was like, pick that book. Like, and I just thought, I can't live like, you know. It was really fun to be a superhero for a few days, but when it wasn't that intense, I just thought, this is cool, but it's sort of a bit much, you know. I kind of want to just sleep. There was a time I just wasn't really sleeping, you know. I was just going from my yoga mat to my bed to my yoga mat to my bed.
Well, because when I was sort of thinking about the Jesus story, I was sort of thinking, well, that absolute certainty he had, like if, you know, reading between the lines, maybe it wasn't like that behind the scenes with Mary Magdalene and his 12, you know, maybe he was just getting pissed, I don't know, whatever, you know, chilling up. But the certainty he seemed to have seemed to reflect that, like, there must have been really an experience of being in two dimensions or whatever, like, it couldn't just have been awakening, because you know people who are awake and they are so, you know, they're not impressive, right?
No,
you know,
they're not, and I've realised that no one's
it's
impressed at all.
I think it's a shocker because you're perpetually, I think it's almost like that idea of authority, it's perpetually falling away, and like the projection onto the other is like, oh my God, you're just left with yourself and your own decisions and your own life. There's no one to look to anymore, because I mean, a lot of what people say is imitative, probably because really there's very simple non-dual thing, it's very simple anyway, and how many words you need to describe this. It doesn't really cut it any. But, you know, like, people do not have access to it. You realize psychologically they're asleep. You can be awake and asleep. You know, like a lot of, it's amazing revelation. I find it very exciting. But, like, it does make me wonder, like, what were the possibilities or something. Like, I know, like, in Jesus' case, it's like, maybe there was no violence there, and Socrates said, you know, what would happen to a man with no violence? He would, with absolutely no violence in him, and Socrates said he'd surely be killed. And
well, there's a very poignant term in the Bhagavad Gita, and it says, I think it goes something like, the wise shall not disturb the minds of the ignorant. And you know, with some of this, you know, it's about, you know, people come to find it if they're seeking, or they have their own revelations, but to try to convince the rest of the world what you know it's fraught, because you're just gonna, you know, you're gonna butt heads against people who are not wanting to be awakened. They're happy living their little lives, whatever they are, and so, you know, there isn't, you know, and that, you know, you look at Jesus, you know, if he would have kept his mouth shut and sort of just say, you know, I know something that you don't. I'm experiencing something that you're not in
But then
literal
Eckhart Tolle
terms.
is still alive, right?
Sorry?
Eckhart Tolle is still alive.
Yeah, but we're living in different times.
Yeah.
But yeah, but whatever, like, there must have been a sense of mission there, because why would there be a need? I mean, for me, I don't talk about this. You know, I have friends who are not the slightest bit interested in this. I never bring it up. You know, I have, you know, and I have friends who are seekers who will, you know, also be very patronizing, and even patronizing to me, give me advice, like, Dawn, all you need to do is you know, accept, you know, it's like, fuck off. You know, I can't stand spiritual speak, you know, because this stuff just falls away for you. Like, a lot of it is meaningless, you know. There is something in hearing somebody say, accept your experience, maybe gives you a little bit of permission, whatever. But there is no one who can do that, and I think that becomes really obvious. And also, you know, so, I don't know what my point was going to be, but it's like, I can't remember, I've lost the thread. But yeah, I mean, why, yeah, because the desire to, I think initially you want to share this because it's, and I think I was a bit like you, it was like, I could just talk normally and people would get this, because, and I think maybe that relates to having been a doormat. It's like, I've always projected onto the other that they know more than me, so they must have something. When I say this, they'll be like, oh, why are you telling me? It's so obvious. But no, it's not. They really don't know. And I, you know, that's something like I still have to deal with, is like, no, they, you know,
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
you know, living from that. But yeah, there's no desire here to well, I'm sitting in the front of a room, but that's different, you know, like, come if you wish, you know, and there's not really, it's just like a platform to explore and a sense of community, isn't it, really? And to be honest, I'm not sitting here totally focused on non-duality, because it's quite limited, and I find it quite boring to talk about, because it's, what can you say, like, and some people like sitting in the stillness, but when I'm sitting at the front of the room, I mean, I feel like, I mean, sometimes it's nice to sit in the still, but like, if it was a retreat, yes, do that, but it's 2 hours, you got to give people something, don't you? Just, I don't know, but yeah, I mean, it sounded like Jesus, it was a mission, but the answers to the Pharisees and whatever, who all this kind of enemy, they were very clever, they seemed to me, and they didn't buy into the narrative of the other. They didn't they knew that the other was manipulative, so there wasn't the same repression. Like if, you know, I'd been doing something on the Sabbath and I'd been caught out and going to get in trouble, I'd be like, oh, sorry, I won't do that again. So there was something, and he was psychic as well, so I find that interesting. He was obviously psychic, so it said, you know, which is just, I do believe in that, and I have experienced it myself around the awakening, not so much now, but, and I totally, I mean, it just goes with near-death experiences, psychic experiences come after that. Again, it's not absolute, because you'll get a few that are really remarkable, and then lots of things you're not psychic about, and like the Kundalini, where like yours is really extreme, but then it's just normal again. It's like you get a glimpse of like maybe the spiritual power that's there when the body is not. I mean, because lucid dreams, you think of like the power of manifestation in a lucid dream, right? I want to change my reality. Sometimes you can, and sometimes you can't. I've done it where, I don't know, I'm in a horrible situation, there's a demon sat next to me, and I'm like, I want to be in a yacht, and then next thing I'm in a yacht, and it's much nicer now. So I like, and it's by thought, it's not even thought, it's the same as making this happen. It's just, you know, what is the word for that? I don't know, but we are magicians anyway, in a sense. Like, we don't realize, like, even dreams, it's like a reincarnation, isn't it? You forget your biography, except in a lucid dream, where you can remember all of that, which is interesting. I don't know, it just gives you a glimpse into possibilities that are just, you know, but it's very disappointing when it stops. And you know, like that's like, oh, you know, you're not looking for experiences after awakening. Well, tell me that if you've experienced this stuff, because you know, it's not like you're hankering after it, but it is so fascinating. It's like
completely.
Even the dark stuff, it's like, you know, wow.
Yes,
And
it never gets boring.
I think as well, if you've had the non-dual seeing, the dark stuff doesn't seem to linger the same. I mean, that's my experience. It doesn't seem to have an after effect, like I should be terrified of hell or something, but it doesn't seem to be come away from those experiences like, you know, all right, that was interesting, right? You know, back to an okayness, like, I don't know. But then the sad thing, in some ways, it's like, well, you know, all this stuff happens, particularly in your case. It's like, well, people aren't that magically transformed, are they? Do you know what I mean? There is no one out there I would think, oh, I'd love to meet that person. I bet they could tell me something that would change my life. I mean, that seems to have gone. There's no one really on a pedestal. Like, that's just totally, you know, trashed, you know. And you see through a lot of what people say, and because the stuff that's, you know, that's real and life-changing is ineffable anyway. Like, it's not like wisdom. People think of wisdom, it's, oh right, wisdom speaks or something, but it doesn't. That's just, speech can't cut it. It can't really, like.
I think Ramana says something similar to that, about silence was the form of communication, and when people reading what they actually, what happened when they were in his presence, change happened, or it didn't happen.
Well, he could get away with that though, couldn't he? He could get away with just sitting on his...
No, he engaged verbally with people. But
oh yeah, I know.
It wasn't as he expressed himself, a guru. He always pointed. People came up, well-known people in the Indian society came up to him And afterwards he said, eventually I will if you want me to be, but I am not the guru, you are the guru. And I was talking about going within, where you were from to go enter into your own heart, you are your own guru. And they asked him when he sort of forecast mentioned he said the physical will no longer be here tomorrow. And he said, well, who's going to help us, dear one? He said, well, what did he say? He referred to, this is here all time. This is always here.
But even all that
was the thing about energetically difference between the conceptual, the storytelling, and the relaxing. I don't know, the actual words aren't there because each word you use is a limited form of and it's basically limited.
Well, even what he said about silence and the communication of that, like, in a way, even that does, like, so you imagine all the non-duality speakers were going around saying that, like, you just
yeah.
But I mean, there's, you know, I think, I know
everything has got its place, so to speak. Use that expression, but
he was a one-off at a particular time, and he did say different things to different people.
So it would seem. So we did aspects. I think it's very
But the silence moves some people. Like, you can sit in a really deep silence, and it can feel like it doesn't necessarily touch anyone. And I've noticed that as well. I remember.
It's not a formula.
No, it's definitely not. It seems to work sometimes.
That's what people are looking for, formulae. Actually how to do the way of and the methodology, and this is actually relaxing out of the how to and more into, or not into anything. It's actually nowness, to use that corny phrase again.
It's true that,
isn't it? It gives it a different order. It's actually it's not a story. Not as though it can't be told as a story, but it's not.
But even speaking of silence, I know, but there's, but it's interesting that silence, sometimes doors touch others.
Who said that? There was another book, wasn't it? Silence Speaks.
Yeah, I think that's publisher or something.
Oh, that was probably Tony Parsons, was it? Silence Speaks. I think he said that. I think he said that. Silence. But there's it's I like this story about Jesus and stuff, or this person, this entity called Jesus, or whatever. There's so much to be. There's no, opinions are opinions, and that is what's happening. The storytelling.
Well, it's just dogma, because people don't actually ask themselves any questions about Jesus, as I can see it, and when people talk about that non-dual terms, it doesn't make any sense.
It's about death, really, isn't it? It's death to the energetic beliefs.
Well, I don't know.
It's to their dissipation. It's I'm not saying that is it, but it's.
I don't know.
The ongoing sort of storytelling.
Well, that's what we're here for.
Well, I don't know whether we're here for.
You're not here for that, but it's what you get. It's what you're getting.
I don't know who's what I'm here for. I don't know anything at all.
But it is, I mean, like my first experience, I think we were talking earlier about heart opening, and it happened with a teacher sat in a cafe.
It happened without a teacher.
Well, I'm talking about my experience. I was just looking in the eyes off, and I find the gaze incredibly powerful. And for me, it was just in that looking. It was like,
wow.
The iron gate that was, it had to be a rusty iron gate that was on my heart, like, but,
wow.
But yeah, for some people it doesn't move. But there is a power in the gaze anyway, obviously, because it shuts off the cognitive side of the brain, the left brain, so the language center it's very hard to think straight and gaze at the same time, because they're kind of mutually opposed, really. But so, and I still experience dropping in that, as in this deepens in that with strangers, just split second. But there's something in it, and I think Tony talks about that, the energy in the room.